Well, Madam President, you would never think to listen to the philosophical reasonableness of Professor Andrews' speech that here was a Bible-thumping believer in the literal truth of the first chapter of Genesis. Here is a book, From Nothing to Nature, written by Professor Andrews. You are, sir, Professor E.H. Andrews, Professor of Material Science, Queen Mary College. Professor Andrews believes that the world began no more than 10,000 years ago. The truth, as most of you will know from radioactive and other techniques of dating, is between 4 and 5,000 million years ago. I shall have other occasion to refer to this book later. Yes, sir.
I would like to point out that in another book I have dealt with the question of radioelectric dating at great length, and would be happy to do so this evening if you wish me to. I've had plenty of time, however, and would not wish to press the matter further. But I will not accept your dismissal of the young age of the Earth as being science against faith. There are scientific reasons for believing in a young Earth.
So you do, sir, then agree that the Earth is no more than 10,000 years old?
I agree that that may be the position. That's the position I adopt.
Thank you, sir. I must say, Madam President, a professional zoologist finds it rather depressing that this debate has to take place at all. To get an idea of how it feels to people like Professor Maynard Smith and myself, imagine that you're an ancient historian called to the dispatch box to defend the proposition that the Roman Empire ever existed. Your opponents in the debate forcefully point out that you can't prove that the Roman Empire ever existed. There are no eyewitnesses, only documents that could be fakes. It's only a theory that the Roman Empire ever existed. Faced with this, all you can do is point to numerous facts about the world today: the ruins of Sarum and Verulamium and Rome itself, the dominance of Latin words through most of Europe's languages, facts voluminous enough to fill shelf miles in libraries. Evolution, too, is a theory whose truth has no direct eyewitnesses. Obviously, there could be no eyewitnesses to events that took place so long ago. But evolution, too, has left its evidence in the world today. Not just a few fragments of evidence, but volumes and volumes and volumes of evidence, which Professor Maynard Smith and I spend our professional lives immersed in. We obviously can't present much of it to you this evening. By its nature, it's not a single elegant proof, like the proof of Pythagoras' theorem. You can't prove evolution to be true. By its very nature, it's a piling on top of one another of literally millions of facts, all of them exactly what the theory of evolution would expect. The logical status of the evidence for evolution is just the same as the logical status for the evidence that the Roman Empire existed. And the strength of the evidence is as great. There's not the slightest shadow of a doubt in the mind of anybody who seriously considered the matter that the theory of evolution is true. How then was it possible for you, Madam President, to dredge up 4 speakers in favour of this motion tonight? I must say, I am rather shocked to discover that the two internal speakers for the motion are students of theology. If they'd been students of material science or pharmacology, I could have understood it. But theologians, of all people, should know better. I'm always being bombarded by theologians and others with creationist literature, and I brought along a couple of good things. One is Professor Andrews' book, as I said. The other is a good one here, The Handy-Dandy Evolution Refuter. Which is designed to be carried around, provides the answers to practically every question the evolutionist can raise based on the latest scientific evidence. Try on your friends. How old is the Earth? Amaze them with your knowledge of the radiometric clock. Be the first on your block to really know the truth about life on other planets, the greenhouse effect, and lunar tides. Capture the conversation with your discussion of the Mississippi River Delta and growth rates of the human race. I looked up growth rates of the human race. It's a good one. It says, if you take the natural rate of increase of the human population, doubling time, and you consider that the human race started 1 million years ago, by now the human race would be so large that we would entirely fill the solar system out to the orbit of Pluto. I was sufficiently impressed with this argument to repeat it for the case of rats, and I calculated that the Earth must be no more, well, the Earth must have started in about 1940 or thereabouts, otherwise, again, the solar system would be filled with rats out to the orbit of Pluto. Now, the other book that somebody has kindly provided me with is From Nothing to Nature by Professor E.H. Andrews. I read this book from cover to cover. I have two things to say to you, sir. One is that you're a very good writer. The other, I think we better preserve the decencies of debate. I will simply quote various passages from this book. Professor Andrews, as I say, believes that the world is no more than 10,000 years old. He suspects that the sun and the stars may have been created 4 days after the earth because of Genesis verse 14, but thinks that there may be a let out here in Exodus chapter 20 verse 11.
The Honourable Speaker is saying exactly the opposite of what I state in the book, and I would invite him to refrain from further comment on the book, to simply to recommend it to all candidates.
I have no hesitation in recommending this book. As I say, it's called From Nothing to Nature. I have said it's extremely well written, and those are not words that I utter lightly.
And perhaps the professor would like to donate a copy to the library.
Now, I propose to continue to quote from this book. On page 52, it is obvious that this sorting out of genes, this is referring to sexual reproduction and the dispersal of genes in that manner, it is obvious that this sorting out of genes can never make one kind of animal or plant change into another. However, the different genes are sorted out. All the genes belong to that kind of creature. You do not get rabbit genes in hares or squirrels. You do not have monkey genes in man. All the genes in man are human genes. Well, I'm sorry to say I have news for you, Madam President and honourable members. That's about as wrong as it can be. The biochemical techniques of Vincent Sarich, Alan Wilson and others have shown that more than 90% of the genes in man are monkey genes. That's just a simple fact of biochemistry. If we look at chimpanzees instead of monkeys, the figure rises to an even higher percentage. This, by the way, is one of the main reasons how we know that chimpanzees are our closest relatives, and how we know that we are far closer cousins to chimpanzees than chimpanzees are to orangutans. That kind of evidence is, in my opinion, by the way, perhaps the most persuasive evidence of all for the theory of evolution. The fact that as you look at the animal kingdom, you find that there is an orderly hierarchical tree of resemblance, particularly with respect to molecules. And this hierarchical tree is in a very great deal of detail interpretable as a tree of cousinship. So you have close cousins who resemble each other a lot, more distant cousins who resemble each other more distantly.